if you don't become emotionally literate and learn how to be with your emotions, you're never going to be able to have that life that you want. This is going to be kind of controversial. All the meditating, all the chanting, all the yoga, all the eating the right thing, all the exercise, all the reading of spiritual material is not going to work. Take a deep breath. It might help, but if you don't start to become, then it really will help. But you have to be an integrated being. This is what's called self-actualization. If you don't, guess what happens? You just end up filling in a hole here or there. Well, I feel really good right now, so I want to keep the feeling really good. So I'll chant more. So I'll do yoga more. So I'll do that because you want to keep the feeling good. That's not spirituality, and that's not self-actualization. That's avoidance. That's avoidance. All right, well, it's good to see you, everybody. All right. So today's topic is emotions. We're going to talk about emotions. And this is something that, when I work with my students, there are things that that seem to be blocks, that seem to be some kind of a struggle, that seem to be some kind of a challenge, that seem to be some kind of resistance. And many times when we delve into it, those blocks, those struggles, those challenges, they're not many times, they're always connected to an emotional state. Right? They're always connected to emotional state. Some of the stuff I'm going to talk about today is very obvious, but it's so obvious that sometimes we miss it, right? We miss it. So, for example, let's say you really have a lonely feeling, right? And you're lonely. So these are feelings. We'll talk about good feelings, bad feelings, all that stuff, right? But you have a lonely feeling. You're lonely. And then the loneliness will morph into something else. Because you feel lonely, then it goes into sadness. And then if it keeps going, the sadness will morph into something else, despair. And then the despair will morph into something else, right? And so, the emotional guidance scale, you know what that is, it goes down this way, all the way down. So at the bottom is fear, and the top is love, bottom is fear. And so everything goes this way, or it's going up this way, right? So the emotional guidance scale is a GPS, right? So when you're sad, then you feel depressed, and then you feel depressed, then you feel overwhelmed, then you feel overwhelmed. This is not exactly, but you understand there's a spiral going down emotionally, and there's a spiral going up emotionally, right? And so ultimately, what happens with us humans in our psyche is that, in general, we start to ride the train, right? We start to ride the train of the emotion. And so the emotion will start to bring us somewhere, and then it'll bring us somewhere else, and it'll bring us somewhere else, and it'll bring us somewhere else. And even though this is not exactly true, but in duality it is, there's a downward and then there's an upward. So some emotions are going to bring you up, and some emotions are going to bring you down, right? And emotions are a very interesting thing because there's a million different kinds of, but there's a lot of different kinds of emotions. And it's really important for us to be emotionally literate, meaning that if you ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? What am I feeling right now? Well, let's do that. In this moment, where you're sitting, where you're watching me, take a deep breath. And I want you to get in touch. You don't have to put this in the comments. I want you to ask yourself, what are you feeling right now? What are you feeling? Just investigate. Just see if you can identify a feeling. It could be happy, it could be adventurous, it could be frustrated, it could be anticipatory. It could be a million things. So see if you can identify it, right? Now, when I say emotionally literate, most of us have an emotional vocabulary of about 10 emotions, right? Depressed, sad, mad, bad, angry. Just say that. Good, happy, joyful, excited, loving. Let's just say it's about 10. I'm just choosing those. So there's usually a few that you can identify on the downward, and then there's a few you can identify on the upward. But remember what I just said. I said million, but there's hundreds of emotions you can have. And most of us, not all of us, we can't identify the emotion because the emotion, we're not emotionally literate. So we put it in the category of bad and good. This is a bad emotion. It doesn't make me feel good. This is a good emotion. It makes me feel good, obviously. Now, that's fine. But I'm going to posit to you that you start to learn more emotion words. Anticipation, adventure, there's so many. There are so many different emotional words. And start to say, wait, what is that? It's not bad. Oh, it's dread. Oh, it's good. No, it's not good. It's excited. It's like tuning in your GPS, your emotional guidance system. You start to tune into it instead of just going, oh, it just feels bad. Oh, it just feels good. Because you are your own instrument. I don't have your instrument. Kathy doesn't have Max's instrument, right? Roberta doesn't have Karen's instrument. You have to tune into your instrument. So I'm going to suggest to you that you start to do some research about emotions, about tons of kinds of emotions and feelings. I've done this before, and I've given people lists of tons and tons of emotions. And when you read all the emotions, you're like, oh my God, there are so many. And you go, well, I'm just living in these 4 or 5, right? So the more emotionally literate you can become, the more accurate you can become about where you are. Now, why do you need to know where you are? This is why you need to know where you are. Because in order to, how do I want to say this? In order to be, I'll say it like this. The master of your destiny. You're not really the master, but the co-creator. Let's just say the co-creator of your destiny. You need to know what direction your boat is going, right? Your boat needs to be, oh, we're going in this direction. I thought it was this direction. No, it's this direction. Wait a second, that's that direction. It's not very, I'm glad on you. It's not very specific, right? You've heard about specificity. But the other thing that it does is it helps you to identify it. And if you can identify it clearly for you, then guess what? Then you can start to see its source. And when you start to see the emotion's source, then you can start to either deal with it, transcend it, or, well, my word for healing is transcend, right? To not let it, this is how it is, to not let it control you. Because your emotion, you are not your emotions. Most people are saying, I am happy, I am depressed, I have anxiety is better than saying I am anxiety. Right? I'm suicidal. I'm not. You are not that. Excuse me, I live in New York City. I don't have my headphones on and I forgot. So here's the deal. To know the source is very important. Very important. And when you can identify the source, excuse New York City, let's just wait a second. Harja, good to see you. The root cause, that's right. Now, let's talk about the root cause. And let's talk about just this one thing. I'm glad you're enjoying this or getting something out of it. Let's talk about the relationship between emotions and thoughts. Emotions and thoughts. That's right. You are not your emotions. You are a being that's having the experience of love, of joy, of frustration, of fear. That's what it is. It's like, let me say this, and then we're going to go about thoughts and feelings. I just thought of this. I don't even know why. It's like when you wear Prada. You wear Prada. You say, I'm wearing Prada. You don't say, I am Prada. Do you? Emotions are the same thing. I'm having an experience of joy. I'm having the experience of depression. I'm having the experience of anxiety. You don't say, I am anxiety. I am depression. And sometimes you do, but this is where it gets confused. So, but you're not the emotion. You have to get that. And sometimes I am very cognizant that sometimes it's very hard to distinguish where you are in terms of the emotion. It's very hard to distinguish that. That's why you need to become emotionally literate, not be a slave to the emotion. So the emotion is guiding you your whole life. If I feel good, if I have to feel good in order to be good. I'm good if I feel good. I'm bad if I feel bad. Do you understand? That is letting the emotion run the show. It's letting that emotion pull you around the world like a dog on a leash, and you're just like, okay, I'm bad, I'm sad, I am happy now, and you're like this. Now, emotions are fine. Hear me very clearly. Emotions are totally great. They make life worth living in many ways. But here's the deal. We have not been taught that we can participate with an emotion. We can be with an emotion. This is why a lot of really good therapy really works, is it allows you to be with the emotion without it destroying you or overwhelming you. Do you understand? I mean, look, I'm never going to forget this example. I love it. Good. So, the devil wears Prada. That's exactly right. The devil wears Prada. I love it. So, thoughts and emotions. What comes first? What comes first? A thought or an emotion? Let's see in the comments. Thought or emotion? What comes first? Thought. Thank you, Vince. The thought comes first. The thought comes first. So if you think, let's think, everyone think right now about, I wish I could share my screen with this. Think about a little baby kitten running around chasing a toy. Think about it. What feeling do you get? What feeling do you get? You get joy. You get excitement. You get cuteness. You get warm and fuzzy in the heart, right? The thought comes first. Steve, I'm not totally disagreeing with you both ways, but right now I want to talk about this because this is the way you start to become emotionally literate. Is you have to start to see how the emotions and the thoughts are connected. The emotion, it always comes back to a thought. That's why I'm telling you, you've got to find out exactly what your emotion is. So you're like, why am I feeling that emotion? Doesn't mean that you don't feel the emotion. We'll talk about that in a second. But there's always a root cause somewhere. there's a root cause, and it's because you're thinking or focusing on something. I'm not good enough, therefore I am depressed. People don't like me, therefore I feel sad, right? The thought is, and here's the deal, most of us are not conscious of what we're thinking. So this is a problem. You're like, oh, it's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day. You look outside and you go, whoa, it's a beautiful day. And then what happens? You feel good. Thought, feeling, thought, feeling, thought, feeling. So I'm going to really tell you this is really important to start to really investigate how your psychology works with thoughts and feelings. When I said at the beginning of this broadcast, I said I work with students, and the students, if they're stuck or they're whatever, it's a negative situation, we always trace it back to a thought. There's a thought. I should be better. They should change. I'm not smart enough. People don't like me. Whatever happens to be. So that thought needs to be dealt with. Right? So the feeling can come so quickly after the thought, it may seem that, Christine, you're exactly right. They're very closely related. But when you get good and you're emotionally literate with yourself, you'll get it. You'll start getting it. You'll be like, well, no wonder. So have you heard this thing about, I'm an empath and I feel too much? So my answer to that always is, you don't feel too much. No one feels too much. We're feeling beings. We're feeling beings. That's what we are. We're receptors and generators of emotions and feelings and thoughts. So you don't feel too much. You just have not been taught how to be emotionally literate. You haven't been taught. And I will tell you that everything that we're talking about, some people have been trained, consciously or unconsciously, to be very emotionally literate. So they can go from one emotion to another and they're fine and it doesn't matter. Many people have not been trained that way. And what I mean trained is, who were your examples as a child? And how much trauma have you had as a child? This is why psychology is so important. So if you had trauma as a child and then you didn't get any support to deal with your emotions, to talk your emotions out, to see what's going on, you will feel overwhelmed by the emotion. It goes one or two ways. You either feel overwhelmed by emotion, or the other thing is you cut yourself off from emotions. You become cold. You become, everything's fine, everything's fine. You go, no, 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 no. I just want everything to be fine, because if I feel bad, I don't want to feel bad. So I got to make sure everything's fine. So you get cut off from emotions. So it's one or the other. This is what happens in psychology with human beings, is that if you haven't been taught to be emotionally literate by somebody or an example in your life, parents or grandparent, you just needed one in your life that really showed how to process emotions, deal with emotions, not get overwhelmed by emotions. If you had that in your life, then it's much easier for you. But if you don't have the example of that, it's very hard. And trauma will make it harder, because the mind's automatic first go-to is save itself. So you have trauma, say there's abuse, any kind of abuse. I mean, depending on the degree of it, but any kind of abuse, then the mind will say to itself, especially, and this is where the ego kind of comes in, but the mind would be like, save yourself, don't go there. Save yourself, don't go there. Because it's so painful, it's so overwhelming that you create this dissociation with the feeling, and you grow up like that's normal. It's not normal. I mean, it's normal for you. Everything's relative, but to be self-actualized in your life, you have to be able to face all these things, see all these things, and realize you can walk through all these things. We're talking about negative emotions mostly, because most people are easy with happy, joyful, abundant, excited, adventurous. They're good with that. It's the other ones that we keep suppressing. And I teach this all the time. What you resist persists. So what you create, what you defend against. I don't want to feel sad. I don't want to feel sad. I don't want to feel sad. Guess what you're going to do? Your underlying vibration down here is going to be so sad that it doesn't even know what to do. Take a deep breath. So I want to read you just one thing that when I was doing my research for today, this really great, it's very simple quote from Anne Frank. She said, feelings can't be ignored, no matter how unjust or ungrateful they seem to be. Feelings can't be ignored, no matter how unjust or ungrateful they seem to be. That's Anne Frank. And I'm telling you, there's a lot said about shadow work and all of that stuff. Some of you probably know that. But if you don't become emotionally literate and learn how to be with your emotions, you're never going to be able to have that life that you want. This is going to be kind of controversial. All the meditating, all the chanting, all the yoga, all the eating the right thing, all the exercise, all the reading of spiritual material is not going to work. Take a deep breath. It might help, but if you don't start to become, then it really will help. But you have to be an integrated being. This is what's called self-actualization. If you don't, guess what happens? You just end up filling in a hole here or there. Well, I feel really good right now, so I want to keep the feeling really good. So I'll chant more. So I'll do yoga more. So I'll do that because you want to keep the feeling good. That's not spirituality, and that's not self-actualization. That's avoidance. That's avoidance, right? So when you try to not feel bad feelings, guess what you're doing? You're deadening your senses to the good feelings. You're deadening your senses to the good feelings. So you're like, I don't want to feel bad. I'm just using bad and good just as the example. I don't want to feel bad. I don't want to feel bad. I don't want to feel bad. And then I want to feel good. I want to feel good. But your subconscious, your subconscious is so pushed on making sure you don't feel this, that anything that feels good, you can't really feel it either because you're taking so much energy and pushing it down here. You can't allow yourself to feel joy. You can't allow yourself to feel in peace because you've got some other part of you controlling the bad. And that's bad. That's bad. So you want to go from suppressing to expressing. Suppressing to expressing. And there's an art to it, and everyone has a different way of expressing their feelings. You've heard this a million times. But if you're on, especially if you're on Inside Timer, you're on some kind of a spiritual path and you're not doing psychological, emotional work, it is not going to work. Because you're an emotional being. You're an emotional being. So you want to find that stasis level where you can go in and out of emotions, bad, good, in between emotions, and it doesn't rock your core, right? It's like being someone going to Disneyland, going, whoa, I'm going on this really scary ride, whoa, 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 but it doesn't change who you are. And then you go to a happy ride and you're like on the happy ride and it's really great, but it doesn't change who you are. Most people are creating a life for themselves psychologically that if they got to stay on all the Disneyland happy rides, that's not real. That's cutting off a huge part of your experience in life. Take a deep breath. So you're either suppressing emotions or you're expressing them. And there's so many beautiful emotions. So many different ways to feel incredible, right? Compassion, tenderness, excitement, jubilation. There's so many beautiful emotions. And don't label the emotion too. This is a good emotion, this is a bad emotion. It's just an emotion. That's it.